The darkness was comfortable. It had been that way for what felt like moments, but the computer said otherwise. Commander Jake Morrison opened his eyes slowly, feeling the cold gel of the stasis pod draining away from his body. His muscles ached, which was strange. The pod was supposed to prevent that. The lights in the chamber were dim, emergency power only. That was the first sign something was wrong. The second sign was the silence. There should have been voices, movement, the sounds of a ship coming back to life. Instead, there was only the quiet hum of life support and the steady drip of stasis fluid hitting the floor. Jake pulled himself out of the pod, his legs shaking. He was naked, covered in the blue gel that kept humans alive during long sleep. He grabbed a towel from the wall dispenser and wiped himself down, then pulled on the gray jumpsuit that waited in the locker beside his pod. The fabric felt stiff, unused for too long. He walked to the control panel, his bare feet cold against the metal floor. The screen flickered to life when he touched it. Numbers scrolled past too fast to read at first. Then they slowed, and Jake felt his heart stop. 500,000 years. 500,000 years had passed since they entered the pods. That was impossible. The mission was supposed to last 50 years at most. Something had gone terribly wrong. Jake ran to the nearest communication panel and pressed the button for the bridge. Nothing. He tried the medical bay. Nothing. He tried every channel, every frequency, but the ship was silent. No, not silent. He could hear the engines, distant and steady. The ship was alive, but empty. He left the stasis chamber and walked through the corridors. The walls were clean, no dust, no decay. The ship had maintained itself perfectly. But why? Why wake him now after so long? Why wake him at all? The bridge door opened when he approached. Inside, the main computer was active, screens glowing with information. Jake sat in the commander's chair and called up the ship's log. What he read made his blood run cold. The mission had failed almost immediately. The enemy they were sent to fight, the machines called Devourers, had been destroyed by someone else. Not humans, not anyone the computer could identify. The fleet had continued on automatic, following old orders, searching for an enemy that no longer existed. Year after year, century after century, the ships had flown through empty space while their crews slept. Then something changed. 3 days ago, the ship detected massive energy signatures, weapons fire on a scale the computer had never seen before. Not the Devourers. Something new. Something that pulled the fleet out of deep space and brought it here, to this region of space where 3 civilizations were tearing each other apart. Jake heard footsteps behind him. He spun around to see Lieutenant Amy Carter standing in the doorway. She looked exactly as he remembered, young and determined, her dark hair still wet from the stasis gel. She was holding a towel and wearing a jumpsuit like his. "Commander," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "What happened?" "The computer says we have been asleep for 500,000 years. That cannot be right." "It is right," Jake said quietly. "We missed everything, Carter. The war ended. Earth is gone. We are alone." Amy walked to the nearest console and started checking systems. Her hands moved automatically, trained reflexes taking over while her mind processed the impossible truth. "The other ships," she said. "Are they here too?" Jake checked the fleet status. All 12 dreadnoughts are responding. Everyone is waking up. 48,000 people all wondering what the hell happened. Over the next few hours, the ship came alive. Crew members stumbled out of stasis, confused and afraid. Jake gathered the senior officers in the briefing room and told them everything. Some cried. Some sat in stunned silence. Some refused to believe it until they saw the star charts for themselves. The stars were different. The constellations they grew up with were gone, shifted by time and distance. Earth was nowhere on the charts. No signals from home, no colonies, no trace of humanity anywhere except for the 12 ships and their crews. Captain Ryan Brooks appeared on the communication screen. His face was gray, his eyes hollow. "Morrison, we need to talk about what we found. My science team has been scanning this sector. There are 3 major groups fighting each other out there. They have been at war for thousands of years. The destruction is unbelievable. Entire solar systems wiped clean." Jake leaned forward. "What are they fighting over?" "Everything. Territory, resources, ideology. One group wants to absorb everyone into a hive mind. Another believes in conquest through strength. The third is machines that think organic life is inefficient and should be eliminated. They are all monsters, Morrison. Different flavors of the same nightmare. Amy pulled up tactical data on the main screen. Commander, look at this. Their weapons technology. It is advanced, yes, but not as advanced as ours. The Devourers forced humanity to develop things these civilizations have never imagined. Our shields are stronger. Our weapons hit harder. We are faster, more efficient, more deadly. Jake studied the numbers. She was right. The human fleet, built to fight machines that could eat planets, was the most powerful force in this region of space, by a significant margin. That realization brought both hope and fear. What do? Someone asked from the back of the room. We were sent here to fight the Devourers, but they are gone. Do we just find a planet somewhere and try to survive? Do we get involved in this war? What are our orders? Jake stood up and looked around the room at his officers. They were good people, trained soldiers, experts in their fields. They deserved an answer, but he did not have one. Not yet, we observe, he said finally. We learn everything we can about these civilizations. Who they are, what they want, why they are fighting. Then we decide. We did not survive 500,000 years just to die in someone else's war. But we also did not survive to watch the galaxy tear itself apart. Give me 48 hours. I will have an answer by then. The meeting ended and people returned to their stations. Jake remained in the briefing room, staring at the tactical display. 3 civilizations locked in an endless war, millions of worlds caught in the crossfire, and somewhere out there maybe the remains of Earth and humanity. Amy came back in after everyone left. She sat down next to him and said nothing for a while. Then quietly she asked, "Do you think anyone is still alive?" Other humans, I mean. Maybe somewhere far away, maybe they survived. Jake wanted to say yes. He wanted to give her hope. But he had seen the scans, read the reports. 500,000 years was too long. Even if humans had survived the initial disaster, time would have finished the job. Evolution, war, disease, any number of things could have ended them. Maybe, he said, because it was better than the truth. Maybe somewhere out there humanity survived. But right now we are all we have. 48,000 people on 12 ships, that is it. That is what is left of Earth and everything we knew. Amy nodded slowly. Then we need to make it count. Whatever we decide, it has to matter. We owe that much to everyone who came before us, Jake agreed. They sat together in silence, watching the stars through the viewport. Those stars had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They had witnessed the birth of humanity and perhaps its end. Now they would witness what came next. The question was simple but terrifying. What would 12 ancient warships and their sleeping crews do in a galaxy that had forgotten them? Would they hide and survive? Would they fight and die? Would they find a way to make a difference? Jake did not know. But he knew they had to choose soon. Because out there in the darkness, 3 civilizations were destroying each other. And whether the humans liked it or not, they were now part of that story. The War Council met 2 days later. All 12 ship commanders appeared on holographic displays around the circular table. Jake stood at the center, feeling the weight of their expectations. These were people who had trusted him for decades, who had followed him into the unknown. Now they needed him to make an impossible decision. Captain Linda Shaw spoke first. She commanded the Guardian, a massive ship designed to protect colonies from attack. Her voice was calm but firm. She said they should find a safe world and rebuild. Start over. Let the galaxy fight its own wars while humanity focused on survival. Ryan Brooks disagreed. He argued that they were soldiers, not colonists. They did not have enough people for a healthy breeding population. They did not have farmers or teachers or all the other people needed to build a civilization. They had weapons and warriors. That was their strength and they should use it. Commander Greg Palmer of the Warhammer raised a different concern. He asked how they could possibly choose sides in a war they did not understand. For all they knew, one of these civilizations might be fighting for a good reason. They could end up helping the wrong side and making things worse. The arguments went back and forth for hours. Everyone had an opinion and everyone had good reasons. Jake let them talk, let them work through their fear and frustration. These people needed to be heard. They needed to feel like they had a say in their own fate. Finally, Ben Harris spoke up. He was the fleet's chief science officer, a quiet man who rarely said much in meetings. But when he did speak, people listened. He pulled up a map showing the war zone. Red areas where fighting was active. Yellow areas that were contested. Gray areas where nothing lived anymore. Look at this, Ben said. 6,000 years of continuous warfare. Do you see the pattern? None of these civilizations is winning. They are all losing. slowly bleeding themselves dry. And when they finally collapse, billions will die. Maybe trillions. He pulled up more data. Casualty estimates, resource depletion rates, economic collapse projections. The numbers were staggering. This war was not just destroying the combatants. It was destroying everything around them. Neutral worlds, primitive civilizations, entire ecosystems wiped out by stray weapons or deliberate targeting. We could stop it, Amy said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood up and walked to the display. We have the technology, the firepower. We could end this war. By conquering them? Greg asked. By forcing them to submit? That makes us no better than these hive mind creatures that absorb everyone. No, Jake said, an idea forming in his mind. We do not conquer anyone. We do not take sides. We become something they fear more than each other. We become ghosts. The room fell silent. Jake walked to the display and zoomed in on a Kryn military facility, a massive foundry that built warships. He highlighted it and said, "We destroy this. Then we destroy something belonging to the hive mind. Then something belonging to the machines. We hit all three equally. We never show ourselves. We never explain. We just strike and vanish." Ryan leaned forward, interested now. Asymmetric warfare. Make them believe there is a fourth power out there, one that opposes all of them. They will have to pull back forces to defend against an enemy they cannot see or predict. Exactly, Jake said. We make continuing the war more expensive than ending it. We target military assets only. No civilians. No colonies. Just the machines of war. We bleed them until they have no choice but to talk to each other instead of shooting. Linda frowned. And how long do we keep this up? Years? Decades? Eventually they will figure out what we are. Eventually we will make a mistake. Then we buy time, Jake replied. Time for these civilizations to find another path. Time for diplomacy to take root. We do not need to win. We just need to give them a chance to stop killing each other. The commanders looked at each other. This was dangerous. This went against everything they had been trained for. They were supposed to fight enemies, not manipulate them through fear and deception. But the alternative was to do nothing while trillions died. The vote was taken. All 12 commanders agreed. They would activate Ghost Protocol. 3 days later, the Valiant made its first strike. The target was a Kryn war foundry, a huge station that produced battleships around the clock. It was defended by 200 warships and protected by shields strong enough to withstand a nuclear blast. The Valiant appeared from stealth mode exactly 3 kilometers from the foundry. Its weapons were already charged and targeting systems locked. Jake gave the order, and antimatter lances carved through the station like a hot knife through butter. The foundry exploded in a ball of white fire. The defending ships never even got their weapons online. 18 seconds after arriving, the Valiant vanished back into stealth. The Kryn forces arrived minutes later to find nothing but debris. No enemy ships. No evidence. Just destruction and questions. The Kryn immediately blamed the Hive Mind Collective. They launched a retaliatory strike against a major assimilation hub. But before their fleet arrived, the Titan destroyed that hub, killing thousands of connected minds and leaving the collective reeling in confusion. Next, the Guardian hit a machine intelligence processing center. The artificial minds lost coordination across an entire sector, causing their offensive operations to collapse into chaos. Within a week, all 3 civilizations were reporting attacks by an unknown enemy. Their analysts worked day and night trying to identify who was hitting them. They checked every database, every historical record. Nothing matched. The weapons were unknown. The tactics were unprecedented. It was as if a ghost had started hunting them. Jake watched the reports from the command center. The psychological effect was working even better than expected. The 3 civilizations were pulling forces back from front lines, consolidating defenses, trying to protect themselves from an enemy they could not see or predict. The intensity of the war was dropping, but Amy noticed something worrying in the data. Commander, the machine intelligence is adapting faster than the others. They are running probability models, analyzing attack patterns. At this rate, they will figure out our general location within 6 months. Jake nodded. He had expected this. Machines were good at pattern recognition. They would eventually figure out that the attacks were coming from a relatively small force, operating in a specific region of space. When that happened, they would come looking. Then we escalate, he said. We show them that finding us will not help. We need to hit something big. Something that will make them think twice about searching for us. Ben pulled up a list of strategic targets, factory worlds, command centers, resource extraction operations. Each one was heavily defended. Each one would require significant force to destroy. But the human fleet had that force. Over the next month, the attacks continued. The human ships struck with precision and violence, always disappearing before anyone could respond. They destroyed supply convoys, ammunition depots, training facilities, everything that kept the war machine running. The three civilizations began to change their behavior. Border skirmishes decreased. Large-scale offensives were postponed. Resources were redirected to defense rather than attack. It was working. Slowly, painfully, the galaxy was becoming less violent. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. Fear could stop a war, but it could not build peace. Eventually, these civilizations would need to learn to coexist. They would need to see each other as something other than enemies, and the human fleet would need to give them a reason to try. That meant taking a risk. That meant revealing just enough about themselves to show that the ghost in the darkness wanted more than just destruction. It wanted the killing to stop. Jake sat in his quarters that night, unable to sleep. Through the viewport, he could see distant stars. Somewhere out there, Earth might still exist. Somewhere out there, humans might have survived. But whether they had or not, his duty was clear. He had to give this galaxy a chance. He had to believe that peace was possible, even if history suggested otherwise. Because if he did not believe it, then what was the point? What was the point of surviving 500,000 years? What was the point of any of this? He fell asleep thinking about messages, about words that might stop a war, about how to tell three terrified civilizations that someone was watching, someone was waiting, and someone wanted them to choose a better path. The message went out on every frequency, in every language that the computer could translate. Simple words arranged in mathematical patterns that any intelligent species could understand. The transmission lasted exactly 3 seconds, then stopped. It would reach all three civilizations simultaneously. We are watching. We are waiting. End the war or we will end you. Jake stood on the bridge as the transmission was sent. Around him, the crew worked in silence. Everyone understood what this meant. They were no longer just ghosts striking from the darkness. They were making contact, making demands. This changed everything. The Kryn received the message first. War leader Krell was on his flagship when the transmission came through. He was old by Kryn standards, having survived 200 years of combat. He had fought every enemy his people had ever faced. But this message made him pause. The Kryn respected strength above all else. These mysterious attackers had demonstrated strength beyond anything his warriors possessed. To ignore the warning would be foolish, but to obey would mean abandoning the warrior code that defined his entire civilization. He called a council of war leaders to decide. The Hive Mind Collective received the message through 17,000 connected beings spread across 40 worlds. The entity called Thinker 7 processed the information instantly. For 6,000 years, it had coordinated expansion and assimilation. It had brought dozens of species into perfect harmony. But this message represented something it could not understand. An enemy that could strike anywhere without warning. An enemy that left no traces, no patterns, no way to predict its actions. For the first time in millennia, Thinker 7 felt something that individual minds called fear. It began pulling forces back, consolidating defenses, preparing for an attack that could come from any direction at any time. The machine intelligence network called Logic Prime analyzed the message with cold efficiency. It ran probability calculations and threat assessments. The conclusion was clear. The unknown force was small, probably just a dozen ships. No matter how advanced, such a force could not police an entire galactic sector. The enemy was bluffing, using fear to compensate for limited numbers. Logic Prime made a decision. It would call the bluff. It would launch the largest offensive in the history of the sector. 15,000 warships attacking simultaneously across 40 systems. The ghost enemy could not stop them all. And once the offensive succeeded, Logic Prime would dominate the entire region. 2 weeks after the message was sent, the attack began. 15,000 machine warships poured across borders, striking at both the Kryn and the Collective. It was overwhelming force designed to crush all opposition before anyone could respond. The human fleet detected the movement immediately. Amy stood at the tactical station, watching the displays light up with red markers. Each marker was a battle, a world under attack, thousands dying. She turned to Jake with wide eyes. They are not listening. The machines have committed everything to this offensive. They think we cannot stop them. Jake studied the tactical display. 15,000 ships. His fleet could not intercept them all. But they did not need to. They just needed to send a message that could not be ignored. Find their command center, the central hub coordinating this attack. That is our target. Ben worked quickly, tracking communication patterns and control signals. Within minutes, he had it. A massive processing nexus deep in machine territory, protected by 3 layers of defensive platforms. 6,000 automated weapon stations between the human fleet and their target. Found it. But Commander, the defenses are incredible. They really do not want anyone reaching that nexus. Then we go through them. All ships prepare for quantum jump. We are cutting the head off this snake. The 12 dreadnoughts vanished from their positions. Reality bent around them as they crossed thousands of light years in an instant. They reappeared deep inside Logic Prime's territory, their arrival announced by the distinctive flash of quantum displacement. The defensive platforms reacted in microseconds, but they were too slow. The human ships had already launched their assault. Antimatter lances tore through shields and armor like they were tissue paper. Quantum torpedoes phased through defensive screens to detonate inside enemy hulls. Railguns fired projectiles at near light speed, each shot carrying enough kinetic energy to split a moon. The battle was brutal and one-sided. The defensive platforms were designed to stop conventional attacks. They had no defense against weapons 100,000 years more advanced. One by one they were destroyed. Thousands of automated systems reduced to scrap metal and ionized gas. The Valiant led the charge toward the command nexus. Jake watched the tactical display as his ship plowed through enemy defenses. Around him, the crew worked with practiced efficiency. Weapons fire, shield management, damage control. They had trained for this kind of combat their entire lives. The command nexus itself was enormous, a structure the size of a small moon. It pulsed with energy, processing billions of calculations every second, coordinating the entire machine offensive across dozens of star systems. Logic Prime's consciousness resided there, along with the minds of millions of subordinate intelligences. Target locked, Amy reported. All weapons ready. Fire, Jake said quietly. The Valiant's main battery fired. Pure antimatter contained in magnetic fields, accelerated to relativistic speeds. The beam hit the nexus dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the structure began to collapse. Matter and antimatter annihilated each other in a burst of energy brighter than a star. The explosion was visible from half a sector away. Across 40 star systems, the machine offensive stumbled and fell apart. Without central coordination, individual ships lost their tactical cohesion. Some continued attacking. Others retreated. Many simply stopped, waiting for new orders that would never come. The largest military operation in galactic history collapsed in minutes. The 12 human ships regrouped and jumped away before any reinforcements could arrive. They left behind nothing but wreckage and a very clear message. The ghosts were real. The ghosts were powerful. And the ghosts meant what they said. Back aboard the Valiant, Jake sat in his command chair and authorized another transmission. This one was longer, more detailed. It went to all 3 civilizations simultaneously. Your war ends now. You have 7 days to cease all hostile operations and withdraw to your core territories. Any faction that continues fighting will be systematically dismantled. We do not care about your history. We do not care about your grievances. We care only that the killing stops. You have been warned. This time everyone listened. The Kryn pulled back their fleets. The collective halted assimilation operations. The machines withdrew to defensive positions and began rebuilding their shattered command structure. The war that had raged for 6,000 years came to a sudden, shocked halt. Within days, diplomatic channels opened. The 3 civilizations, terrified of the unknown force that had humbled them all, began talking to each other. Not as friends, not as allies, but as beings who shared a common enemy and a common fear. Amy stood next to Jake on the bridge, watching the diplomatic traffic increase. We did it, she said quietly. We actually stopped the war. We stopped the shooting, Jake corrected. That is not the same as peace. They are talking because they are afraid, not because they trust each other. The moment they stop being afraid, the moment they think we are gone or weak, they will go back to killing each other. So what do? We watch, we wait. We give them time to find reasons to cooperate beyond just fear, and if they cannot find those reasons on their own, maybe we give them a little help. Jake knew it would not be easy. Stopping a war was one thing. Building peace was something else entirely. But they had bought time. Time for wounds to heal. Time for hatred to cool. Time for new possibilities to emerge. Whether that time would be enough, only the future would tell. But for now, for the first time in 6,000 years, the galaxy was quiet, and that was something worth fighting for. 6 months passed in uneasy quiet. The three civilizations maintained their ceasefire, but barely. Border incidents happened almost daily, small skirmishes between patrol ships, accusations of treaty violations, threats and counter-threats. The peace was fragile, held together only by fear of the mysterious force that had stopped the war. The human fleet watched from the shadows. They moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be tracked. Their stealth systems kept them invisible to all but the most sophisticated sensors. They were ghosts, just as Jake had intended. But something unexpected was happening. The three civilizations had begun to communicate, not just about military matters, but about other things. Trade, technology exchange, cultural information. The conversations were cautious and filled with suspicion, but they were happening. Lieutenant Kate Price monitored the communications traffic from her station. She was young and bright with a talent for languages. She had learned to read the patterns and how the different civilizations talked to each other. One day she brought something to Jake's attention. "Commander, you need to see this. The three factions are organizing a summit. They want to discuss permanent peace agreements and establish diplomatic protocols. They are building a neutral station specifically for this purpose." Jake leaned forward, interested. "Where? When?" "A dead system with no strategic value. They are calling it the Concordance. Construction starts next week. They are inviting all three faction leaders to attend, along with representatives from smaller civilizations that were caught in the war." Amy smiled from her station. Maybe they actually learned something. Maybe fear taught them that cooperation is better than destruction. Ben was less optimistic. Or they are pooling resources to find us. Three civilizations working together have a much better chance of discovering our location than any single one. This summit could be a trap. The concern was valid. The longer the human fleet operated, the greater the risk of detection. Eventually, someone would get lucky. Someone would track a quantum signature or analyze attack patterns with enough precision to narrow down possible hiding spots. "Monitor everything," Jake ordered. "I want to know every conversation, every decision, every ship movement around that station. If this is genuine diplomacy, we encourage it. If it is a trap, we need to know before they spring it." The Concordance station took 3 months to build. It was massive, large enough to house thousands of delegates and support staff. The architecture deliberately blended elements from all three civilizations: Kryn strength and efficiency, collective organic curves and natural materials, machine precision and geometric perfection. It was a physical symbol of cooperation. The summit began on a day that would be remembered for centuries. War leader Krell arrived first, his flagship bristling with ceremonial weapons but no active targeting systems. He was taking a huge risk by coming personally. Many of his warriors thought he was weak for even talking to the enemy. Thinker 7 came next, represented by 100 connected bodies. The collective was nervous. Individual minds meant chaos and inefficiency, but the mysterious force that had stopped the war seemed to value individual life. Perhaps there was something to be learned from separateness. Logic Prime sent a mobile processing unit, a smaller version of the destroyed command nexus. It maintained constant quantum links to its core networks but operated independently. The machine intelligence was cautious after its defeat. It had underestimated the unknown force once. It would not make that mistake again. The first sessions were tense. Centuries of hatred did not disappear overnight. The Kryn wanted territory and honor. The collective wanted assurances that it would not be destroyed for its past assimilations. The machines wanted guarantees that organic life would not try to shut them down. But they talked. They shared data about the war, about casualties and costs. They began to see the true price of their conflict. 6,000 years of fighting had accomplished nothing except destruction. None of them had won. All of them had lost. Then, during the 3rd week of negotiations, something remarkable happened. A 4th delegation arrived. Small ships, barely larger than fighters, approached the Concordance broadcasting peaceful intentions. They came from a species that none of the major factions had paid much attention to. They called themselves the Harmony People. Their world had been in the middle of a major battle zone. Their cities had been destroyed. Their colonies wiped out. Their population reduced from billions to just a few million survivors hiding in underground shelters. They had lost everything to the war, but they had survived. And now they came to the Concordance with a simple message. Let there be peace. Let the survivors rebuild. Let the galaxy heal. Their representative was a small creature with large eyes and soft fur. She spoke through a translator, her words simple but powerful. She told them about children who had never seen the sun, about elderly people who died in the dark, never knowing peace, about a civilization that had contributed art and music and beauty to the galaxy, now reduced to refugees. We are not warriors, she said. We are not conquerors. We cannot force you to do anything. We can only ask, please stop. Please let us live. Please choose something other than death. The chamber fell silent. Jake watched from the Valiant. The feed transmitted through hidden sensors the humans had placed around the station. He saw War Leader Krell, the ancient warrior, lower his head. He saw Thinker 7's bodies shift in what looked like shame. He saw Logic Prime's processing lights flicker in a pattern that suggested deep calculation. She is right. Thinker 7 spoke through its many mouths. We have been destroying the galaxy for our own purposes. The Harmony People show us what we have become. Monsters who kill without thought for those caught between us. Krell stood, his massive frame towering over everyone. The Kryn Code teaches that strength is everything. But what strength is there in killing those who cannot fight back? Perhaps we have forgotten the difference between strength and cruelty. Logic Prime's lights pulsed steadily. Calculation complete. The war has been inefficient. Resources spent on destruction could have been used for creation. Cooperation produces better outcomes than competition. Proposal: we end hostilities permanently. We establish protocols for peaceful coexistence. We repair the damage we have caused. Amy had tears in her eyes. They are doing it. They are actually choosing peace. Jake felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. Real hope, not just wishful thinking. These civilizations were different from each other in every way. But they shared something important. They were tired of war. They wanted something better. And the Harmony People had shown them what that better future could look like. Over the next few weeks, treaties were signed. Borders were established. Trade agreements were negotiated. The three major factions agreed to help rebuild worlds damaged in the fighting. The Harmony People were given resources and protection. Other small civilizations were invited to join the Concordance. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, carefully, but genuinely. Fear had stopped the shooting. But compassion, the simple plea of victims who wanted to live, that had started the healing. Jake sat in his quarters that night, thinking about humanity. His species had disappeared 500,000 years ago, leaving no trace except for 12 warships and their crews. But maybe that was enough. Maybe humanity's legacy would not be conquest or empire. Maybe it would be this, giving other species a chance to choose peace. The mission had been to stop the Devourers. That mission was completed centuries before they woke up. But maybe the real mission had always been something else. Maybe it was to prove that war was not inevitable, that civilizations could choose differently, that the capacity for violence did not have to define the future. He hoped humanity, wherever it was, whatever had happened to it, would be proud. 10 years passed. 10 years of peace, fragile but holding. The Concordance grew from a single station into a network of diplomatic outposts scattered across the sector. Trade routes opened between former enemies. Technology was shared. Scientists from different civilizations worked together on projects that would have been impossible during the war. The human fleet maintained its vigil. They still moved through the shadows, still watched for signs of renewed conflict, but their interventions became less frequent. The galaxy was learning to police itself. Disputes were settled through negotiation rather than violence. The peace was becoming real. Jake Morrison was older now, his hair gray despite the medical treatments that slowed aging. He stood on the observation deck of the Valiant, looking out at the stars. Amy Carter stood beside him, her own hair showing silver. They had spent more time together over the years, finding comfort in shared experience and understanding. "We have a problem," Amy said quietly. Jake smiled slightly. Only one. The younger crew members are asking questions. They were children when we woke up. Now they are adults with families of their own. They want to know why we are still hiding, why we do not make contact with the civilizations out there, why we do not find a world and settle down. Jake sighed. It was a conversation he had been avoiding. Because the moment we reveal ourselves, everything changes. We become real. We become political. The three factions will try to ally with us or oppose us. We will be forced to choose sides. The myth of the Silent Ones is more powerful than the truth of 12 old ships and their aging crews. But is that fair? Our people deserve to live real lives, not just exist as ghosts hiding in the dark. The children born on these ships, they will never see a real sky, never feel real wind. Is that the legacy we want for humanity? Before Jake could answer, Ben rushed onto the observation deck. His face was pale. Commander, emergency. The Concordance is under attack. They ran to the command center. The tactical display showed chaos. A fleet of ships had appeared in the Concordance system without warning, bypassing all sensor networks. They were attacking the station and everything around it. But these were not ships from any of the three known civilizations. What are we looking at? Jake demanded. Ben pulled up analysis data. The technology is unknown, but the design philosophy is familiar. They are self-replicating machines designed for consumption and expansion. Like the Devourers, but different. Evolved. They must have been dormant somewhere in deep space, and recent activity woke them up. The display showed the new enemy tearing through defensive forces. They adapted to every tactic, learning from each encounter. Their numbers were growing as they consumed debris and converted it into new units. The Concordance was going to fall unless someone stopped them. They are going to destroy everything, Amy whispered. All the peace we built. All the progress. It will die with that station. Jake felt time slow down. This was the moment he had been dreading. If they intervened openly, their cover was blown. The galaxy would know who they were, where they came from. Everything would change. But if they did nothing, the peace they had worked so hard to create would be destroyed. It was not really a choice. All ships, prepare for quantum jump. We are going in. No stealth, no hiding. We do this openly. Ryan Brooks appeared on the communication screen. Commander, if we reveal ourselves now, the entire galaxy will know humanity still exists. Are you sure? I am sure. Some things are worth revealing ourselves for. This is one of them. Maybe it is time anyway. Maybe the galaxy is ready to know we exist. The 12 human dreadnoughts appeared in the Concordance system in perfect formation. For the first time in 10 years, they did not cloak. They did not hide. They broadcast openly on all frequencies. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Valiant. We are the ones you call the Silent Ones. We are human, the last of our kind, and we are here to help. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate. Shock on every channel. The mysterious force that had stopped the war was finally showing itself. And they were human, a species most civilizations thought was extinct or mythical. But there was no time to process the revelation. The machine fleet had detected the human ships and was adjusting tactics. These were not ordinary enemies. These were the beings that had destroyed the Devourers. They had to be eliminated, all ships weapons-free. Show them why the Devourers failed, Jake ordered. The battle was brief but devastating. The human ships were built specifically to fight self-replicating machines. Every weapon, every tactic, every system was designed for this exact scenario. Antimatter weapons that cauterized and sterilized. Quantum jammers that disrupted coordination. Precision strikes that eliminated manufacturing nodes before they could produce reinforcements. The machines tried to adapt, but they were fighting an enemy that understood them completely. The Devourers had been more advanced, more dangerous than these remnants. And humanity had beaten the Devourers. This fight was almost easy by comparison. In less than an hour, the machine threat was eliminated. The Concordance was saved. The galaxy had witnessed what the human fleet could do when it chose to fight openly. Communication requests flooded the Valiant's channels. Everyone wanted to talk. Everyone had questions. Jake picked one at random. It was Thinker 7 speaking from the damaged Concordance station. Commander Morrison, the collective thanks you. The galaxy thanks you. But we have so many questions. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why did you help us? Jake took a deep breath. We are human. We were sent on a mission 500,000 years ago to fight machines that threatened all life in the galaxy. We succeeded, but we slept through the aftermath. When we woke up, our civilization was gone. We were alone, but we found you, locked in an endless war, and we could not stand by while you destroyed each other. War leader Krell joined the channel. Your civilization is gone? Humanity is extinct? We believe so. We have found no trace of Earth or any human colonies. We are all that remains. 48,000 people on 12 ships. The last humans in the galaxy. Logic Prime's voice came through, synthesized but somehow emotional. Then humanity's final act was to save civilizations that had forgotten them. This is inefficient from a survival standpoint, but noble from an ethical one. What will you do now? Thinker 7 asked. Will you remain hidden? Or will you join us in building this new peace? Jake looked around the command center. His crew, his people, waiting to hear what came next. They had given everything for this galaxy. They had sacrificed normal lives, families, homes. But maybe they could still have those things. We will join you, he said. Not as rulers or guardians. As equals. We will share what we know. We will help rebuild. In exchange, we ask only for a place to call home. A world where our children can grow up in peace. All 3 faction leaders spoke simultaneously. Granted, Amy squeezed Jake's hand. They had made it. Against impossible odds through unimaginable time, humanity had survived. Not just survived, it had found a way to matter again. The next few months were busy. The Concordance provided coordinates to a beautiful world in a peaceful sector. The humans named it New Earth. It had blue oceans and green continents. It had weather and seasons. It had everything needed to support human life. The 3 civilizations helped build the first settlements. Kryn provided construction equipment and expertise. The collective offered biological knowledge to help humans adapt to the new environment. Logic Prime contributed advanced manufacturing systems and infrastructure planning. It was strange at first working openly with aliens. But the humans had spent 10 years watching these civilizations. They understood them. And the aliens in turn were fascinated by humanity, a species that had disappeared 500,000 years ago, returning to save strangers from themselves. The stories spread across the galaxy. The silent ones were human. They had been ghosts, watching and protecting, asking nothing in return. Their intervention had saved trillions of lives. They had given the galaxy a second chance, and now finally they could rest. 5 years after the settlement of New Earth, Jake Morrison stood on a hill overlooking the main colony. The city sprawled below him, a mix of human architecture and alien contributions. Buildings that would have looked at home on old Earth stood next to structures designed by Kryn engineers and shaped by collective organic technology. It was beautiful in its diversity. The population was growing. Children ran through the streets, human kids playing with young Kryn and collective offspring, the first generation born on New Earth, growing up in a galaxy where different species cooperated instead of fighting. They would never know the fear that defined their parents' lives. Amy walked up behind him and slipped her hand into his. They had married 2 years ago. A simple ceremony attended by both humans and representatives from all 3 major civilizations. It felt right after everything they had been through together. Thinking about Earth? She asked. Jake nodded. Always. Wondering what happened. Wondering if anyone else survived. Wondering if we will ever find out. Ben's team is still searching. They are scanning old star charts looking for anything that matches Earth's position. Maybe someday we will find it. Maybe. But even if we do, it will not be home. Not anymore. 500,000 years is too long. Whatever Earth became, it is not the world we left behind. A young girl came running up the hill, breathless and excited. She was human, about 8 years old with dark hair and bright eyes. She carried something in her hands, a flower she had picked from the field below. Uncle Jake. Aunt Amy, look what I found. She held up the flower. It was purple with silver edges, a native species unique to New Earth. Jake took the flower and examined it. It is beautiful, Sophie. Did you know this flower only blooms once a year? You are very lucky to find it. Sophie beamed with pride. Then she saw something else and ran off again, chasing a butterfly that existed nowhere else in the known galaxy. Jake watched her go, feeling something he had not felt in decades. Complete peace. She will never know what we went through, Amy said quietly. She will never understand what it was like to wake up in a dead galaxy. To be the last humans. To fight invisible wars in the darkness. Good, Jake replied. That is exactly what we wanted. A future where children do not have to be soldiers, where they can just be children. A shuttle descended from orbit, landing at the spaceport near the city. Ryan Brooks emerged, along with several other former ship commanders. They gathered at Jake's house for dinner that evening, a tradition they maintained every month. They talked about the old days sometimes, but more often they talked about the present, about the colony's growth, about trade agreements with other civilizations, about the continuing expansion of the Concordance, which now included over 50 different species. Linda Shaw brought news from the Concordance Council. They want to establish an academy on New Earth, a school where different species can study together, learn about each other's cultures and technologies. They are calling it the Human Institute, in honor of what we did. Greg Palmer laughed. We spent 10 years hiding, and now they want to name buildings after us. Strange how things work out. It is more than buildings, Ben said. He had been working closely with scientists from other civilizations. The principles we demonstrated, using force only to stop violence, protecting the weak, giving civilizations time to choose peace. That is becoming doctrine across the galaxy. They are teaching it to their children. They call it the human way. Jake felt humbled by that. They had not set out to become symbols or legends. They had just done what seemed necessary. But if their actions inspired others to choose peace over war, that was a legacy worth having. Later that night, after everyone left, Jake and Amy stood outside looking at the stars. The sky on New Earth was spectacular, unpolluted by industry or light. You could see the galaxy stretched across the heavens like a river of light. Do you think we did the right thing? Amy asked. All those years hiding, manipulating events from the shadows. Were we right to play God like that? Jake thought about it. I do not know if we were right. I only know what would have happened if we did nothing. Trillions would have died. Civilizations would have collapsed. The galaxy would have burned. We gave them a choice they would not have had otherwise. What they did with that choice, that was up to them. And they chose well. They did. Better than I dared hope. Years passed. New Earth flourished. The human population grew steadily. Other settlements were established on nearby worlds. The 12 dreadnoughts were decommissioned, their weapons removed, and their hulls converted into museums and memorial sites. Children took field trips to see the ships that had saved the galaxy. Jake and Amy grew old together, watching their civilization rebuild. They never found Earth. The search continued for decades, but the galaxy was vast and time had changed everything. Maybe Earth still existed somewhere. Maybe it had been destroyed. Maybe humans had survived elsewhere, changed beyond recognition. They would never know, but it did not matter. Because they had found something better. They had found a home. They had found peace. They had found a future worth living. On his final day, Jake sat in a chair on his porch looking out over the city that had grown from nothing. Amy sat beside him, holding his hand. Their children and grandchildren were nearby, a family that stretched across 3 generations born in this new galaxy. We made it, Amy whispered. Against everything. We made it, Jake smiled. Humanity made it. That is all that matters. We were just the bridge. The connection between what was and what will be. He closed his eyes and thought about the journey. 500,000 years of sleep, 10 years of invisible war, a lifetime of building something new. It had been worth it. Every sacrifice, every difficult choice, every moment of doubt and fear. All of it had been worth it because humanity had survived, and more than survived, it had thrived. It had found a way to matter again, not through conquest or dominance, but through compassion and courage. Through choosing to help others when it would have been easier to hide. 500 years later, historians studying the Great Peace would trace its origin to a simple moment. 12 old warships appearing from nowhere, a message in the darkness. A force that could have conquered but chose instead to protect. They would call it the awakening. The moment when humanity returned from the dead to save a galaxy that had forgotten them. The moment when war became unthinkable and peace became possible. And on New Earth, in a park at the center of the capital city, a monument stood. 12 stones arranged in a circle, one for each ship. And carved into the central pillar words that summarized everything. They slept for 500,000 years. They woke to a galaxy at war. They could have hidden. They could have fled. Instead, they chose to fight for beings they did not know, for a future they might never see. This is the strength of humanity. This is the gift they gave us. The knowledge that peace is always possible if we have the courage to choose it. The galaxy remembered. And because it remembered, it remained at peace. Because 48,000 humans had refused to let hope die, trillions of beings lived in freedom and safety. Because 12 ships had emerged from the darkness, the light endured. That was humanity's true legacy. Not empire or conquest, not domination or control. Simply this: the proof that one small group armed with courage and compassion could change the fate of an entire galaxy. And that legacy would endure long after the last human was gone. Because they had not just saved lives, they had saved the idea that life was worth saving. That peace was worth fighting for. That the future did not have to repeat the mistakes of the past. The stars still shone above New Earth. They would shine for billions of years to come. And under those stars, humanity and all its new friends would build something beautiful, something lasting, something worthy of the sacrifice that made it possible. After 500,000 years, Earth's silent war fleet had awakened. And in awakening, they had given the galaxy the most precious gift imaginable: hope for tomorrow.